All right, we'll get started. Thank you so much for your time and your energy. As we were saying, this is a PowerPoint that we're trying to provide to you to make it your own, to be able to prospect with, to be thought leaders in your community, using it in a number of different ways that you think are creatively valuable to you in your organizations and your communities. To understand the benefits, challenges, ROI, remote workforce. And remote workforce right now is at the forefront of all discussions with most companies. We have found that most companies were forced to go to remote, and they did not quite do it the way that they really thought they were doing it. And reality is setting in now, is saying, oh, I have a remote workforce. Whether I liked it or don't like it, I have one. And this gives us a little bit different focus and a little bit different way of looking at it. So world's changed. COVID has made this happen. People who went home, predictions are 25 to 30% of the people who went home on a remote will not be coming back to their offices. Those that do come back to the office, they're not going to be there full time. Everyone's sort of gotten accustomed that, you know what, I can in fact work from home 1 or 2 days a week, and I can enjoy the benefits of a remote workforce as a result of that. So we're in a new world. We're in a different way of doing business. And what we want to do is let's discuss those challenges and how do we manage the remote workforce, which is the most important thing that we can be doing. I got 2 separate presentations here that you're going to be able to divide or combine depending upon how you want to utilize them. And the first presentation is, managing the remote workforce and developing a culture to help your employees thrive. And what we're going to we'll go into a little bit more depth of why it's important to have the right culture and have the right tools in managing the people that are remote. And then the second, if everyone could just mute themselves, that would help too, okay? The second thing we're trying to do here is that what's the technology that's needed to facilitate their success if in fact they're working from home? So the first presentation is the remote workforce developing the culture. And let's start with the true benefits of this. Got increased productivity if it's managed properly. Your productivity will increase if you no longer manage by observation and you manage by KPIs and you manage by accomplishment. You're going to end up with improving health and the well-being of the employee. And this goes back into life balance. We find that people will, if they're managed properly and they know what's expected of them and they're able to deliver what needs to be delivered, some of us are smarter than others and some of us get done quicker than others. And you know what? The management now comes down to not how many hours you put in, but what did you produce? And it's a real mind shift for management to understand that. We have decreased related environment impact. And, like here in Southern California, to get to the office is, most people, I don't care really how close you are, but on an average, it's anywhere from a half hour to 45 minutes one way. So, we're adding about at least an hour to an hour and a half of good time, valuable time to all your employees. And when you do have to go out, there's less people on the road, so that's also helped. And this all comes down to we want to create work-life balance. And you just can't work all the time. You have to have some balance. You have children, you have hobbies, you have things of your interest, but you still want to be productive and you still want to produce. And if the remote workforce is managed properly, we can accomplish all of these. And we find that for both of us, the remote worker is less expensive for them. They're not paying gas, they're not wear and tear on their car. They don't have to go out to lunch because they can have lunch at home. I've noticed my cleaning bills have decreased, my gas bills have decreased. And I look at it and I say, I'm spending less money. And then it's less expensive for the company as we go forward, which will explain where both sides of this transaction ends up in a better economic situation. So what do we need to have success in building this culture? And the first thing you need to do is you have to have a real open relationship with each one of the remote workforce. And this is where we go into DISC. We need to really pay attention to those that are high I's are going to have a more difficult time with the remote access situation. High I's need interaction with people, so you got to accommodate for that. The real high C's, in fact, I was on a web share this morning with all of our technicians, and I said, hey guys, how are you handling this, not having interaction, not being able to, converse with people? And the majority of us came back to me and said, well, Dale, we're technicians. We don't like to talk to people anyway. So that's okay. So we moved on. So you just got to remember, what their mindset is as you move forward. And you get to know each person. You take a little bit different approach to each person, and you become more sensitive. If you're managing people, really understand the value that we brought to you through TAG with the DISC, because it's real critical and important. As you increase your remote workforce, you'll have different time zones. So coordinate the time zones is another aspect that we're looking at. And as we get into time zones, I've just hired 2 new level 2 technicians. One is 4 hours away and one is 9 hours away. So, but they're in full swing, they're working, and they're in different time zones, so we take that into consideration. We use video as often as possible, and this is why when we get out here, we always try to insist that, please come on with your picture, your video. People need to see you. We like to take a look at, body language. You're able to communicate with a lot more senses other than just hearing, and it helps endear a relationship, and it helps to build a relationship. We're still into relationship building, not only with our customers, but we're also in relationship to our employees, which is absolutely critical. And the hardest thing we do as human beings is communicate effectively. And, so having video becomes an absolute critical importance of this. We meet on video every morning at 8 o'clock with all the employees of the company. And we do a Rob Robin. We take 15 to 20 minutes. That's how we start off our day. Who's working on what are your challenges? And we just talk, and, people get into the video, the 8 o'clock video, about anywhere from 10 to 5 minutes earlier, so that they can have that opportunity to talk with each other, have fun with each other, joke with each other, and have that interrelationship. And that's absolutely critical and important to be able to do. We have video calls at scheduled times throughout the month. We do it daily, and then we have certain meetings with certain key people for management meetings, department meetings, and we have this all on video. A few cancellations as possible on these one-on-one interactions, and we do have one-on-one interactions with various people. And here again, depending upon who you're managing, depending upon who you're working with, who has direct reporting lines with, you got to keep consistency, because we're not in the office where we can just say, hey, well, give me 10 more minutes, I'll be right there. You got to have that consistency, and that's a discipline as management that we need to have. So the success in building this is, do not forget their career paths and employee evaluations. And we're as guilty as everyone else that's out there, is the time and finding the time to find time to do employee evaluations, where we look at building their careers. With this COVID, Lane came out with a very strong program for us of saying, okay, things will slow down a little bit, gives us a time to rebuild, gives us a time to put together career path planning, training planning, and it was absolutely amazing what we were able to do and redirect the focus of our operations department by doing this. Schedule face-to-face meetings at least semi-annually in educational and team building. And as the COVID opens up and things open up, the guy that lives 9 hours, the persons that live across the country on, East Coast, West Coast. All right. We have scheduled at least once a quarter having everybody come in, and we'll bring them in on a shift basis so we can keep the business going. But everyone's going to have a chance to go into group training, team building exercises, and we're trying to format is that do we do this on a weekend? Do we bring their families in? Do we make it a fun, educational? Do we put on what we do at our TAG conventions where everyone gets together, gets to share ideas and physically do that? And we plan on doing that on a semi-annual basis. And I'll show you how we pay for that, all right, as we go through this. Treat them with respect for their time, talent, and job function. And, the best thing in communications, as long as you are respectful, and as long as you recognize people's talents, and as long as you're able to have that open communication with employees, this is where you become a better manager and you become more productive within your company. And the remote workforce is more demanding of management than it is on the employees, because we need to sit down and make sure we have this proper culture moving forward. You got to connect people with a purpose. And this is where we come back to our strategies, our mission statements, the vision of the company. Give everybody, what's the purpose? Why are we doing what we're doing? And we just had a reorganizational within our company, INET at least, of reissuing organizational charts, reissuing job descriptions, reissuing where we're going, because we're making a major transition to Azure as heavily and as hard as we possibly can. And we're preparing our employees, and we're preparing our staff of, here's the new INET. It will be heavily orientated to the Azure transaction business. And that took some time to do that, but we've created that purpose. Here's what we're all trying to do. And then, nothing channels motivation to succeed like a shared vision. And that's the role of all of us. Those of us that were fortunate enough to go through the leadership classes, it came down to, that's our job. Our job is to create a vision. And our job is to get people to buy into that vision and promote that vision so everybody knows where they're going and why they're going there. And remote workers are especially in need of connecting with an organizational purpose, because you have to understand, we don't have that interaction within the office. We don't have that quick communication. So we as managers need to manage better than we've been managing in the past. So we want to focus your team members on goals and accomplishments and hold accountability. We want to provide technology that supports the communication and collaboration. And we want to be able to measure the quality and the quantity of our outcomes. We don't ask for reports that no one reads. We don't ask for unnecessary information that has no value to us. We make sure that we know what our goals are. We give them the proper tools that we can collaborate, and we give them measurements that everybody understands and are realistic to achieve. So as a remote worker, they're simply human colleagues out of physical range. But you've got to mentally think of them that they are your employees. They are you, and the employee is what your company is. Your company has changed. The culture of your company has changed. You have to embrace it, because we're not going back to what it was like before. Being mindful about implementing basic practices will help people deliver their agreed tasks and projects. And this is why remote workforce is harder to do. Most of us have never done this. Most of us have not sat down with an employee and said, what are your objectives? What are we trying to accomplish? Most of us have not sat down and worked out a career path. We come in, Joe's over at his office. He must be working. And you know what? 90% of the time, we don't have the faintest idea what they're doing, how they're doing it, why they're doing it. We have to become better managers. We have to become better leaders in the environment that we are. And what's going to happen in the future is employees now expect remote work opportunities. And this is really, really good for us, because it opens up our range of who we can bring into our company and the talent that we can bring in our company. But, the remote worker is going to say, you know what? I like this lifestyle. I like it being less expensive. And oh, by the way, I don't have to live in the most expensive territories possible. I can add value to my life and to my family's life. Current remote workers plan on working remotely for the rest of their careers. And, I'll give you a classic example. I have a good friend, and she's an engineer on the F-35 for Northrop Grumman. And I was talking to her the other day, and she said, you know what? I've gone home. I've always enjoyed the remote work. I'm very self-reliant. I'm disciplined, and I hold myself accountable. I've been more productive at home versus all the interruptions. And she's in negotiation with her company saying, you know what? I'm not coming back. If you can't find a remote, my position cannot remain remote. All right, I will go look for another job. So she's out interviewing right now, and she's waiting to see if Northrop, in fact, is going to do what she's asked him to do. And you know what? The probability, because she's really good at what she does, she's going to end up being a remote workforce. Some refuse to accept an on-site position. Here, that's my classic example. And this is a gal who's making, big bucks for her engineering capacity, and she's saying, I ain't doing it. And you're going to find more and more people are going to be that. So we as management need to be and understand this, all right? Because all it can do is make our companies better companies and more profitable. So we're seeing less resistance from companies across the board as a result from today's situation, which I think is a good thing. The reason a year and a half ago that we said, hey, you know what, we got to start looking at remote. You guys need to go to that. Here's the advantages of it. We tried to show everyone the advantages of it. And, as the situation has occurred out there, it has helped accelerate our thought process where we thought everyone needed to go anyway. Prior to COVID-19, many were unwilling to adapt to this arrangement, while others allowed remote workers maybe once or twice a week or as an exception for a few employees. We need to retool our companies, all right? We have an opportunity to retool our companies to become a stronger company as a result of what has occurred here. And this is what we call the silver lining of what's occurred out here. Remote workforce will continue to grow and will continue to become more productive. This is not going away. Unwritten rules and the myths. Being seen at your desk assures the manager knows you're working. All right, the craziest thing you've ever want to see is that, you know what, I've always said in my entire business career, I don't care how many hours you put in. Here's what I want. Here's why I want it. Here's where I need it from. And here's what we're doing. And, get it done. And I don't care how long it takes you. All right. And now we really can get that if you know how to manage in this fashion. Arriving later and leaving earlier must equal a lack of commitment. That's not the case. If we get to the tune of understanding what do you want, all right, from an employee, if the employee understands what's expected of them, all right, you're going to be more productive. And recognition promotions go to office workers. And this is a thing that, this is why we as managers got to have that open relationship. We got to have that one-on-one. We got to help build their careers. We got to help guide people. We got to make, our job is to get rid of all of the hurdles that we put in front of people and allow them to be successful. We want our employees to do everything that they do best on a daily basis. That's our responsibility. Myth, hard work equals time on the clock versus net outcomes. Craziest thing I've ever heard of. I mean, if you were disciplined enough to know what you want, all right, guess what? If they do it in a half a day, or if they do it in, an hour, do you care? The answer to that should be no. And critical decisions even happen in the hallways or missed at home. And you know what? If you're managing your remote workforce properly and you're developing their skills, all right, promotions will occur with people who are remote. Let's get rid of those negative myths, all right? Gallup research shows the key to successful fostering flexibility, besides managers checking in on remote employees, is to bake it into the culture. This means attacking some of these unwritten rules of many work cultures, all right? And the reason we have these cultures and we're not embracing remote is that a high percentage of the people out in the workforce, managers aren't good managers. This takes a manager that's a more intelligent, more flexible, and an individual who gets it rather than, it takes a 20 to be able to manage a remote workforce, is I guess what I'm trying to say here. To counter this, create culture of flexibility requires 3 simple things from leaders. That's us. Manage by objective, not by observation. Take the time and get clear on the goals and expectations that you want. And then equipment flexibility. Give them the right equipment and equip for flexibility. Have some flexibility of getting what they need to be able to get done. Give employees remote productivity and collaboration tools. All right. Don't send them home like we send them home here is that, I'm using my cell phone, and none of them have any scanners. None of them have SD-WAN. None of them have, they went home with a friggin' cell phone. Right. That's insanity. And that's what most of our customers did. Don't overdo it because you can crush productivity. You don't want to tie them down and chain them down with technology either. You still have to have that flexibility. Be flexible, ask for flexibility, and make the evolution of work successful for everyone. And that's good management. That's good leadership. Nothing new there. All right, we got to set some expectations. Organizations should make improvements to their remote work policies and capabilities. How many of you have gone back now to take a look at your, the employee handbooks? All right, we came out with that program that made it real easy to do an employee handbook. All right, but you know what? It needs to go back and we need to change it. This is a different world. Companies will increase productivity and performance issues by creating key performance indicators. KPIs is the new vocabulary. Leaders, managers need to understand and need to develop KPIs. And that's a whole nother process that TAG is working on, is helping all of us create those key KPIs, all right, so that you can, here's your KPIs, now modify it to what you're looking for. And in this presentation, I have some examples of KPIs that we're utilizing, all right? Remote team members are aware of expectations and their performance can be monitored. What are you doing? How are you doing it? And how are you? Key performance in KPIs for measuring remote. Well-designed KPIs allow remote employees to see how their accomplishments affect the overall success of an organization. You know what? Everybody wants to contribute. Everybody wants to be successful. Everybody wants to work in an environment that they're appreciated. Everybody wants to be recognized for their talents, and everybody wants to have an open, honest conversation with the people that they deal with. This isn't rocket science. This is just, being a good human being and treating people with respect, and you start with that. So I'm going to go through some typical KPIs, and I'm going to use our own accounting staff. And the reason we chose accounting is that everybody in the world has accounting, all right? And I've often maintained, why does the accountant come into our office? So what are some of these KPIs? Let's talk about accounts receivable. Run aging reports monthly to check on outstanding balances. All right, reach out to members, sponsors, customers, follow up on 2 to 5 days, depending upon what it is, status, or expectations or feedback. Accounts payable. Pay the invoices, review vendor balances weekly to make sure payments are sent out before their due dates. Memorize transactions in QuickBooks helps pinpoint any billing discrepancies. All right, payroll and HR. Bi-monthly timesheet submittals are needed from non-salary employees to report payroll. Payroll has to go out twice a month. All right, monthly employee 401 contribution reports and submissions. I-9s should always be turned in by 2 days before employment and should always have update forms of identification on file and be kept 3 years post-hire date or 1 year from termination date, whichever is longer. Operating cash flow analysis, daily monitoring and cross-checking with online bank balances, cash versus bank balance, essential tasks to measure financial flexibility tied to accounts payable before weekly run checks. Bank reconciliations are done monthly. Financial reports, run income statements, profit and loss, and balance sheet reports monthly to review budgets versus actual items and review cash flow for effective forecasting. So if and here again, you can go into much more detailed. And if you sit down and say, well, here, whoever your accountant is or whatever the case may be, is that what's our cash flow? Here's why we have to have cash flow analysis. Here's why we have to have financial reports. Here's why I need these reports. In like at INET, I run, when COVID started, I run weekly AR, AP, and cash weekly, because I wanted to see that I didn't want this to get out of hand. I got one customer out of all of my customers that I'm fighting with right now for payment. But you know what? I don't have anything over 40 days. Most of our payables are 35 days, and I have nothing over 40 days. But I also, at 35 days, I don't service them. I contact them, tell them that you're on credit hold and so forth. But, that's part of Griselda's KPI is that, Griselda, I don't want anything over 45 days do. And so she does what she does. So when you get all this done, if you get your daily reports, you get your weekly reports, you get your monthly reports, you have your meetings to set up budgeting, do you care how much time she or he spends on it? The answer is no. You need to know, though, what you want. They need to know why you want it. And you know what? You sit down and you work out and you show them what you're doing with it. So when you create these KPIs, we want simplicity. We want alignment with organizational goals. They need to be relevant. They need to be measurable. They definitely have to be achievable. And, I'm working with an individual right now, all right, new program that we're working on, very excited about it. And, we've set some KPIs, sat down with them and said, you know what? Make it your own. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. You can get me these 2 appointments, on a monthly basis of what and of the nature that we're looking for. I've died and gone to heaven. You've died and gone to heaven. And oh, by the way, if you do that, here's what you make. Here's the effect it has on us. And oh, by the way, here's the long-term situation. But you know what? I didn't come in and say, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. You let people who are talented come up with the solutions, because you know what? Majority of the time, their solutions are better than yours. And a really good leader understands where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are. And you look at any successful company, it's a company that allows employees to contribute and let them set their own KPIs. All right, that's what we start with. And then you add to it, and then everybody's on the same path. All right, challenges. It's trust. It's a two-way street. You got to trust the employee has to trust you. And you know what? Trust comes with respect, and trust comes not by words, it comes by actions. Due diligence in the hiring process. Ryan has one of the best hiring processes that any industry has ever brought to an industry. You're right. If you go through the process, if you follow it up, you got a high probability of hiring a 20. All right. And now that hiring process has to deal with their ability to be able to work remote. Do they want to work remote? And do they have the proper environment to work remote? And if you got 5 kids screaming and you got the dogs barking and they're at the kitchen table, you know what? You got to give a second thought to the environment. The other thing is every state has different laws. Make sure you understand the laws. Make sure you check with your attorneys. All right. You do have to have FaceTime. You do need to go meet with them, during this process. Employees don't treat remote as flex time, that I can do whatever I want to do. I mean, there's if you have KPIs, you're going to get what you want. And then you want to make sure they got proper technology, which is the second half of our presentation. And then having and establishing the KPIs, allow them to say, geez, Joe, tell me, here's your job description. Tell me how I measure. Tell me how you hold yourself accountable. Tell me what you're going to provide. Let me tell you what I need, and let me tell you why I need it. Let me tell you the vision of the company. What a wonderful conversation that has to be with an employee. So what's in our future? as the workforce becomes more progressive, virtual tools, cloud remote working collaboration tools, virtual reality conferencing will become preferred forms of communication. The other thing that we're doing here at TAG right now, we're spending a tremendous amount of time of really trying to understand and an in-depth understanding of AI, right? Artificial intelligence. I mean, this is the next major technology coming down the road. The initial AI has been somewhat, disappointing from a technology standpoint, but we're seeing a fast acceleration of AI. We know it's in our future and how we're going to incorporate it into remote. So that's our technology need to facilitate the success. So this is a second. So let's talk about, if there's not anything else that people want to mention here, but let's talk about the technology. All right. Now this is a second presentation, and I said you can either incorporate it into one or you can do it separately. But the technology becomes real critical of what success is going to be. What's the right technology that's cost effective to facilitate success of the remote workforce? ROI for you and your customer is that, remote workforce minimum, you should be able to reduce your square footage of your office space by 25%. TAG did this when we moved to our new facility. We said, we're started incorporating remote workforce, and we went into it saying, you know what, we don't need as much space because of this and this reason. Right? Increase company's capacity without adding square footage. Right? So, when remote workforce says, okay, my company's growing, but you know what? I don't need to get more space. I'll grow it with a remote workforce versus bringing people into the office. This is the one that's absolutely, super productive for us. Hiring outside the metropolitan areas and reducing payroll costs. I was able to get a level 2 for almost 35% less out of my territory, out of where I live, and got the same level 2 capacity for just less cost. And the cost that I have, that person is above the normal he would be able to get living where he lives. All right. So it was beneficial to both sides of the transaction. Attracting higher qualified employees. We're going to end up with longer retention of employees if we're managing them more properly, and we will end up with increased productivity without any question. So typically reduce the square footage of a client's office space at time of lease or renewal. And I do this on a small office, 4,000 square feet. Office needs to be calculated to ROI for going to the cloud. Workforce should become part of your education to your customers as you transition to cloud. Use these slides, make it your own as you incorporate into the sales process of cloud services. What we were doing, and one of the reasons we went to cloud, is that we were finding ROI is that we would sit down and say, oh, hey, you need to go to cloud. Here's why Azure is so important to you. And if you get everything out of your offices, all right, in cloud, here's some of the reduction that you're able to have. And benefits of that remote was that we cut our costs, increase our profits. So we lower the cost and we improve productivity. We have a leaner, smarter development team, a higher number of part-time workers, better alignment with employees, and we have less overhead. And we have increased cash flow. Well, as a business owner, I put a star against each one of those. All right. If you own that business, that's what we try to accomplish every day of our lives. Why would we not use this to do that? And then the other thing is that for us, it really, really proved effective. We have access to a larger talent pool. Everyone's saying, I have a hard time hiring a technician. We looked at it and said, well, you know what? You're trying to get it in your own area. Go outside of your area. But here again, you've got to take on that leap forward to today's world. The right technology, intelligent, hardworking employees, it can be a seamless process. And I'm going to talk about the 7 steps of technology for success for remote workforce. All right. Step 1 is the assessment. Run remote network security assessments. All right. Everybody went home. All right. They're using their computers on their desk. Do they have agents on them? Have you incorporated them into your network? And here's what I try to tell people. You don't have remote workforces that went home, all right? You have 20 employees, 15 of them are home right now. Well, guess what? You have an enterprise system. That you have a company now that has 15 locations plus your corporate headquarters. Treat it as an enterprise network, right? Step 2 is access. What's the internet provider? We're saying, you know what? We need to provide the internet for our employees because you know what? I don't want Sally, Jim, and all the kids, streaming videos and everything else on my network where I have an employee that needs the network to be functional for them, all right? What's the internet speed up and down? Internet router modem provided, all right? Do they have the right modems and routers provided? What's their Wi-Fi coverage access points within their facility, all right? Are we putting in SD-WAN? Because if I have 15 remote sites, guess what? I can consolidate my firewalls, put them on an SD-WAN, have the 5G backup for them, and guess what? They get to operate better than they were operating in the office. Oh, by the way, if I do that, can I reduce all my costs, my telephony costs, my internet costs at my office? The answer is yes. You got to do some ROIs there. So you got reduction someplace, you got added costs the other place, but guess what? You got an employee that has the proper tools. And I've always said, no matter what your profession is, the company that has better tools for their employees is a better company. And I can use that for every job that you have out there, starting with, let's start with the butcher. The butcher who has better knives, better tools, better sharpening is a better butcher, all right? The hairdresser who has the better clippers, the better scissors, they're a better hairdresser. The technician that has a better computer and the better tools always makes you a better company. Step 3 is what's your security? Are you going in VPN? Are you next-gen AV malware? What are you doing with your malware? What are you doing for security? Do you have at least DNS level protection? Do you have advanced password protection, MFA? Do you have, so what's our security package and how do we protect that? Well, you protect that the same way as if you were an enterprise system. And oh, by the way, when you're in Azure and everybody's in remote, your cybersecurity costs plummet and you have better security. And that's a whole nother web share and a whole nother education process. Step 4, operating system. Right? Who's providing the PC and the laptop? All right. I say we should provide it because once again, we go back in with the tools. All right. What's that PC? What's the laptop? Does a PC laptop have a camera on it? All right. I don't have a camera. How many people, your employees, I don't have a camera here at the house. Really? Today's technology is that you have cameras. Does the PC laptop have speaker and a mic? Does the headset wired or Bluetooth? How convenient is for them? You spend 9 hours a day sitting in front of this computer on Zoom calls. Guess what? It's a little easier to have the proper tools, right? And then, what's our telephone service? Is it cloud-based service? Is it a hard phone or a soft phone required? If it's a soft phone, do we have the headsets for them? And then, what's the software that we're putting in? What email and office suites are we providing everybody? Do we have them on 365? Are they Google? Are they in G Suite? Are they in video conferencing? Are they using Zoom or any other, video connectivity? Such as GoToMeeting, Teams. Are they using Teams? And once again, that's another whole area that I get to talk to my customer about Teams and Azure and 365 and collaboration, Teams and SharePoint through 365, eFax software. And you know what? How about a peripheral devices? Have I provided them a printer and a scanner, right? And so, all this comes in as what's a proper technology. We put out a 28-point document, the 28 points of discussion for a remote workforce. You know what? And I like to ask my customers, I go, oh, well, I send them home and they're off their cell phone. I said, what do you think that's costing you? All right. Think about it. What's the difference of having a remote office or having somebody working out of their house? It's an enterprise system. So that's the printer, the scanners, and so forth. So I'm going to open this up for discussions. All right.
All right.
Love you all. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care, Dale. Bye.